Hey everyone, and welcome to Rambling Reviews, where we analyze different types of media and or their cultural relevance. My name's Christian, and this is Modern Family, Season 1, Episode 5, Coal Digger. Written by Christopher Lloyd and directed by Jason Weiner. Now, this episode finally addresses the elephant in the room, that being the age difference and wealth difference between Jay and Gloria, and asks the question, essentially, is Gloria a gold digger? And I think the way that this show handles the complexity of this issue is, as usual, both very funny and relatively insightful. So without further ado, let's get into it. We open with the Pritchett's discussing how they're inviting the rest of the family over for a barbecue, but the same day they're doing this is when this football game that Jay wants to watch is on, and he even says he doesn't want to watch the game with people who don't know the game because they're going to ask questions and stuff. Meanwhile, we have Manny drinking coffee and having breakfast. When Jay questions someone why he's drinking coffee, he says, one, it's part of his culture, understood, and also that he's preparing for having to climb rope in gym. Now, I never took gym in high school, middle school, or anything like that, but I did. I do personally prefer like a dark roast Colombian coffee when it comes to coffee, and I want to touch as well on two things there. First of all, the understanding that people who are very into something like sports might not want to share that with people who aren't familiar because, yeah, people like me often will talk. However, I've tried to be aware of that, and I think the best thing you can do if you're somebody going into anything blind like sports where you don't know it and other people around you do, is to just enjoy the company of the party that you're having. Maybe, catch the game every now and then and maybe sit down and watch with the people, but you don't really need to ask stuff unless it's pertaining to maybe something outside of the game, or asking maybe not mechanics, but I don't know, they might mention that someone's been cut or something and you ask like, oh, why is that? Just kind of joining in the conversation and things of that nature, taking an interest, but not being like super annoying about your questions and stuff. Meanwhile, at the Dumfies, we have a funny moment where Haley tries and fails to ask for extra money, saying she needs it for a book. When she can't come up with a title, Alex razzes her for it. And we have a moment where we see that Luke has dressed himself inside out and also zipped his shirt into the fly of his pants, which kind of is used as an example with, I want to say like Jack and Jill, but that's not it at all. Phil and Claire, that Luke is, a rather odd kid in the way that he, processes things and comes up with ideas and things of that nature. We have this little moment where he's like, I don't know, testing the blade of a fan on his tongue for some reason. I mean, look, here's the thing, right? Kids are obviously very inquisitive and things of that nature, right? I think it's only natural for kids to, want to explore the world. I know I've always been a very inquisitive person in general, especially as a kid. And I think, people in general tend to be that way. But, it is true as well that if you're at a point where you're kind of wondering, why are they being like this about it? It's a bit, I don't know, take your kid to like a specialist or something if you need to. Finally, we have Cameron and Mitchell also getting ready for the big day, as Cameron is very much looking forward to the football aspect of it, where Mitchell is not. Now, this essentially prompts a discussion on kind of Mitchell's snobbiness, where he does in fact refer to, sports as sports ball. And I was not aware that, that was like a derogatory term people who didn't really get sports would say about stuff. I kind of used that joke one time to make fun of myself, like, oh yeah, sports ball team. But like, I didn't realize that to the people I made the joke to who were sports fans, it was like insulting me for like, I don't know, acting like a band that I liked wasn't important, or something having to do with, I don't know, a video game or movie or something that I liked. But, so on that note, I want to say it's important to be, and this is a good example, I think this episode does a good job at addressing that. It's important, especially in a romantic relationship like Mitchell and Cameron have, to address each other's address each other's interests, and take interest in what your partner or even your friend or someone is interested in, and you'll see how that could make you bond closer together and things of that nature, which is really cool. The other thing I want to touch on in regards to that is that this is one of the examples we see in which Cameron is very much not a stereotypical gay man, right? Now, again, obviously the actor that plays him isn't gay, but what's interesting to realize with that is that, the representation he's giving as being a gay man, but very kind of tough and kind of more, I would say, conventionally masculine in a lot of ways, being into sports. And he mentions how he was like raised on a farm, and he's just a tougher guy in a lot of different ways, is very, interesting, I would say, and very, like I don't know if I want to say like a breath of fresh air, but, it's just an example where these guys they're not stereotypes, and they're not put into like, where like in these guys' case that gay is their whole personality or anything like that. Like these are characters, and again, I just think these are great examples of representation and stuff like that as well. But back to the show, we have a moment where Phil and Claire are called into Luke's school because he got in a fight with another kid. As they show up, they find out that Luke and Manny actually got into a fight with each other, and we'll find out more what they were arguing about later, but essentially, we have this kind of funny moment where the principal's trying to figure out how the family is all connected together, and I totally relate to this because I was adopted by my grandparents, and because of that, it kind of threw all of what I refer to my family, both to myself and others, out of whack. Like, I refer to my uncle, who is my mother that adopted me, so biologically my grandmother. I refer to him as my uncle. I refer to, and then like my dad who raised me, I have no blood relation to him. So like, I get it. I understand how confusing and complicated it is when explaining things. I normally get to the point where when I'm explaining things to other people, I will refer to people as like who they are, and then I'll just refer to them as like by their first names to kind of help people understand who I'm talking about, rather than go through like all the crazy stuff. But I totally get it. This prompts a little tiff between Gloria and Claire as seemingly old wounds are brought up, and Gloria mentions, especially on this ride home, that she doesn't really feel like, Claire welcomes her into the family, at which point, basically, it's just decided to kind of try and hash this out and, make up at dinner. Whereas Phil explains to Claire, he says, "I just hate when my two girls fight," where Claire understandably responds, "How exactly is she your girl?" This is one of those many moments we've seen thus far, and I imagine we'll continue seeing, where, Phil makes these kind of weird comments and, kind of indirect or direct passes at Gloria in a way. And, just a running joke. I've kind of touched on it before. I can see how it would be like, negative or problematic or what have you, but I think they were just trying to make it like a running joke for the character. It's a little odd, but it's fine. Meanwhile, with Mitchell and Cameron, we see that things are actually going very well, as Mitchell impresses Cameron by showing that he's been studying and he knows about the players and their injuries and things behind the scenes and all that stuff. And it's really cool to have someone share that interest with you and everything. He does make a snobbish comment about how if sports fans can follow it, it can't be that hard, but one thing that I really like about this show and the way that it handles, people making, changes like this and really trying, with things like this, whether it be something small like, taking an interest in your partner's hobby, or something much bigger like accepting someone for being, different than you in any capacity. Um, they, they really do show that, for when these characters aren't perfect, and that again they really do feel like characters, because it's like even someone that is going to, take more of an interest in their partner's hobby like this might still kind of give some jabs here and there about how like they don't really respect it or what have you. um I've always been someone where I will try to, be interested in, and such, the things that, like, not even just like romantic partners, but just even friends and such, things that they're into, so that, we have something to bond over and talk about and stuff like that. Obviously, it's not good to like force something that isn't real. But I totally understand the concept of trying to get interested in something else, or even just giving something more of a chance because you're experiencing it with someone um, who you enjoy their company, whether they be a romantic partner, a friend, whatever it might be. With everyone finally gathered for dinner, they get Luke and Manny to make up pretty quickly, though unfortunately the same can't be said with Gloria and Claire. We even see that um, Claire and Gloria are kind of competing in a way where they both made a pie for dinner, for dessert rather, and we have Phil just kind of trying to get them to clear the air and talk with each other, and we'll revisit that in a bit. As we have Jay finally sitting down and watching the game he's been waiting for. Alex shows up, however, and immediately starts kind of mentioning how it doesn't make sense that Haley wouldn't be interested in football, considering it's a bunch of hot, sweaty guys in, like, football uniforms, as it were, right? And how there's very little reading, which, as somebody who doesn't really care about sports, or especially football myself, I do especially find the halftime show, the cheerleaders, and the commercials to be the most enjoyable part of, like, the Super Bowl, for example. So I totally get why why Alex would think Haley would be interested in it, as I kind of am for that reason. Just not the guys playing the cheerleaders, but I get it. But yeah. But here we have Cameron and Mitchell joining, as Cameron is even fully painted with whatever sports team is supposed to be representing. I would think Gators because of blue and orange. Again, understand I know nothing at sports. I didn't even know that, like, USF and whatever college football is called are like different divisions, and not all sports teams like compete in the same division and stuff. It's complicated. I don't know anything about sports, or especially football, but I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's funny. You see how dedicated he is to have that the face paint on and everything. Now, Mitchell has done all this preparation, knows the players, knows relatively about the game, at least enough to keep up in the conversation and everything of that nature. And yet it turns out that the players he knew about are not playing the game. So everything he learned just goes out the window, and he has the quick, rude realization that he's not going to be able to follow along with us after all, even after he really did put effort into trying to, get this. Finally, we have Claire and Gloria talk everything out, where Claire basically just explains that, she didn't like Gloria at first because she was jealous, with how, just obviously how hot and even capable and everything Gloria is, and the fact that it wasn't super soon, but it was after her mom had left because Claire's mom and dad broke up, as we had discussed previously, things of that nature. It makes sense as to why she had the feelings against her that she did, and they just kind of have this understanding that that basically that was before Claire knew Gloria, and that now that she's met her and gotten to know her and everything, they're on much better terms and all that, and so it was basically in Gloria's head, as she is led to believe at this point. But with Luke and Manny having made up as well, they're essentially kind of telling everybody what they were fighting about, and one of the things comes up that Luke says, I told Manny his mom used to dig coal. And at first, everyone's like, what is that? Like, well, what is that referring to? And of course, it's kind of, immediately obvious for, especially adults, both in the room and actually watching. You know, she, Claire called Gloria a gold digger, which this understandably, of course, offends Gloria. She's very confused. She's like, what is this about? Like, who says I'm a gold digger, right? And then she kind of goes back to Claire. She's like, oh, so it's not just in my head, and understandably removes herself from the situation. To which we have a funny moment where Manny once again refers to Claire as his sister, being like, great, now my sister and mom are fighting. So we have another one of those like interview moments where Claire says, if somebody says what everybody else is thinking, does that make them a bad person? No, I think it just makes them brave. So, Claire basically gives the same excuse that every racist uncle gives at, family gatherings where he says, hey, I'm just saying what we're all thinking, right? And, Claire kind of realizes that, no, that was just a really, shitty thing to do, essentially. So Phil tries to resolve the situation by going and talking to Gloria directly, where we have this great moment where she's basically trying to prove that she's not materialistic and that she doesn't need these things, as she takes out a bunch of her her bras and panties from her drawer and just like throws them all on Phil. But Phil essentially explains to Gloria that Claire didn't really mean it. It just kind of took time for her to get to know her. And he also mentions about how Jay didn't like him when they first started dating, but especially once Mitchell brought Cameron home, that kind of made things a lot easier for Phil. And speaking of Cameron and Mitchell, it's been mentioned before that I don't remember if it was actually mentioned in an episode yet or if it comes later, but that Gloria kind of, people will think, understandably, that she married Jay for his money. But she says she married him because she thinks he's sexy, which, for one, I think is really sweet. But the old comment and everything, and the whole thing about her possibly being a gold digger, starts to get Jay thinking, as which he decides to ask Cameron and Mitchell, essentially, if you didn't know me, if I was just, a gay guy that you guys could date or pick up, would you try to pick me up in one of your bars? And of course, Mitchell is like kind of mortified by this question, but Cameron is immediately just jumps on and he's like, oh yeah, absolutely. Like, and at first I thought he was kind of like just soothing Jay's ego, but it gets to a point later where I don't really think that's the case. Meanwhile, Claire has now gone to talk to Gloria as well, and she just kind of brushes off the fact that, Phil is covered in, Gloria's underwear. Kind of whatever moment. Again, it's running theme with Phil and all this here. And speaking of running themes, we have this bit where Gloria is trying to prove that she doesn't need these material things to be happy, and that's not why she's with Jay, and all those different things. And so one by one, she's like, first she removes her earrings. She's like, what do I need to prove this to you? Do I need to give up these earrings? They're like, no. Do I need to give up this bracelet? And she removes each one as she's taking off, and then she's like, do I need to take off this? Do I need to get rid of this dress? Phil doesn't say anything. Because, he, just like I, and I think a lot of guys especially, but I'm sure, many women and stuff as well, watching are like, you can remove the dress, that's all right. You know what I mean? Like, Sofia Vergara, not gonna complain about that, you know what I mean? But, Phil kind of awkwardly leaves and basically says that, no, this is about you guys, you need to have this conversation out, all those different things, right? And, again, in a moment that concurrent with the running theme of Phil and Gloria here, he has her panties like left in his pocket, like those like, what are those pockets called? Like the ones they have like cargo pants. He's wearing cargo pants and he has like yeah. And like, Phil, you have, and he's like, no, this is about you, not me. And then he leaves. But yeah, again, you can definitely see this behavior is creepy. I don't blame you, but I think they really were just trying to do it for laughs. But anyway. Just have to keep bringing it up. After this, though, Gloria and Claire have a little heart-to-heart, and Claire basically, explains that, yeah, she was very caught off guard by the whole relationship with, Gloria and her dad and all that, and that, it's going to take time to get used to, but she is getting used to it and learning to accept her more, and she's sorry and all that. To which, Gloria essentially accepts her apology, but also says, if you really want to prove to me that you're sorry, because you embarrassed me in front of everyone down there, if you really want to prove that you're sorry, jump in the pool. To which, we have this kind of sweet moment where everybody's taken away from the things they're doing. The guys are taken away from the game. Everybody, follows Claire, and, she at first is like, well, look, I'm standing by it. Isn't that enough to actually, she's like, all right, fuck it. And she does actually jump in. And we have this nice, beautiful moment where everybody's just in the pool together, one by one. Everyone kind of jumps in, all except for Haley, who's been on her phone the entire time. Again, typical, teenage girl in this show, right? And, Cameron comes in with a giant cannonball, and we end the scene that way. And we end on, of course, a very, heartfelt moment once again, with the episode, and it's incredible as always. But it wouldn't be Modern Family and the incredible sitcom that it is if it didn't have that hilarity to go along with the beautiful, message and everything at the end there. So we have this bit where Claire, everyone's of course drying off from the pool. Claire and Mitchell are basically talking about how, weird it is to think that anyone would find their dad hot. And Mitchell's like, no, you think it's weird to think about Gloria? Cameron was saying he'd make a pass at dad at a gay bar. And, Claire even says, as far as she's concerned, the dad only had sex twice, which was, for each of them. And that's a common, thing that a lot of people have with their parents, where they, like, a lot of people are very squeamish about the idea of their parents being, like, sexual beings or anything like that. And I always found that very weird, and not really making much sense, because for one, like, don't you still want to be, like, sexually active with your partner or partners, whatever it may be, when you're older as well? Like, wouldn't you want that to, I don't know, it just, I never understood, like, that, being, like, squeamish about your parents. That way it's like, well, they're adults, they're, sexual beings like you are, like most people are, so, just part of life for most people. So anyway, though, but we do have this, hilarious moment where Cameron and Jay are talking about, one of the people on the in the game fumbling, and how basically, Cameron says playing center, he would always get blamed for the quarterback's mistakes, whereas Jay was quarterback, and he, basically says it probably was your fault. So they do this bit where I don't know what, like, position or like what exactly they're doing with football here. It's like before they throw the ball, where they get in, like, the position before the quarterback tosses the ball here, and Mitchell and Claire just kind of walk in and see this right here, which, especially without the context of football, it definitely looks like something other than football. That's all I'm saying. But so we end on that funny note, and that's essentially, well, that's the end. As always, this was an incredibly good episode. Once again, I cannot recommend enough to actually watch the show if you're watching these reviews and enjoying them, which I, of course, hope that you are. But yeah, I really like the way that it, we kind of tackled, and it wasn't really addressed, like, that much as far as the concept and the idea of Gloria, being a gold digger, and Jay winning her over essentially with just his money. It wasn't really delving into that much, but more so the concept that, like, look, I understand that you make him happy. You guys seem good together. There doesn't seem to be any kind of, abuse of power or anything happening here. So, nor anyone taking advantage or anything. So it seems to be a really beautiful relationship. And I think that that's just an important thing for, audiences even to kind of, look at it as well, is that, like, as I kind of mentioned in the first, episode of this series, yes, there are, power imbalances at play that could be taken advantage of, but neither one does that. And I think it's just a really healthy example of, yes, this is a big age gap, but it's fine. They make it work. It's not an issue for them. As well, of course, everything with I mean, really, that was kind of like the main thing, and then we had all the stuff with Cameron and Mitchell, and I mean, yeah, like I said before, taking an interest in your partner or your friends or whoever's hobbies and things like that can really mean a lot to them, and I think that that's a really really good thing to do. But it could be where the hobby changes in some way and you weren't expecting it. So I mean, that's then you just gotta roll with those punches. But overall, definitely a very good episode. Not one where I would say like each character had like a big thing they went through or whatever. Really, it was just kind of between Gloria and Claire. But it's good. It was really good to address that and kind of clear the air between them and everything. And yeah, I thought it was a really really good episode. Of course, a lot of humor, a lot of heart, as these episodes have been so far. And yeah, that's all I got. So, as always, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what yours are in the comments down below. Follow me on social media for more. Subscribe and ring the bell to stay up to date. Leave a like if you like. And if not, I hope you find something you do like. Later, guys. Peace and love.